Hey everybody, welcome to Wingtalk. This is Steve. This is going to be a fun episode. We're going to talk about all the myths that are out there and debunk them. We're like Mythbusters. Plus it's Halloween and we all dressed up really nicely because we put the memo out a month ago. So it's going on. This is my costume, by the way. This is the, I love the INAV fixed wing group costume in case you can't see it. And so I got the memo out today. Hey, Darren.
Hello.
How are you doing? Look, where'd you get that cool ass shirt?
Oh, I got it from the INAV fixed-wing group store.
Oh, that's awesome.
Some ropey Chinese ad post popped up in the group, that's for sure.
That's a legitimate shirt, which means none of the money goes to us. So, collected. It means you pay fair retail prices for the shirt. You can show off your swag at an affordable price. At your local flying field with that. And who designed that wonderful shirt?
That might be Rage Against the Machine. If people know where it's I borrowed the idea from. It'd be a Rage Against the Machine album. I think it's a Renegades album.
Oh, it's a Renegades.
As for Halloween, I at least have a skull.
I have candy, if that makes any difference. Fantastic. We have somebody that's been away for a while. And so he's looking like, I hope he's unmuted. So put a thumbs up if you're unmuted. Okay, good. All right, Luke, what's going on, babes?
Yeah, it's all good. It's been a busy time, but now I have some time off and hopefully doing some more flying. Just as the weather gets shit.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You got to get out there and get flying before too long. Can I not ask about your girlfriend?
No. Out of bounds, not allowed whatsoever. No questioning.
Is she still alive? Okay. Okay.
Yeah, she's fine. She's just gone to university in Edinburgh. So.
Oh.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, yeah, you got one of those smart ones. What was her major again?
She's doing genetic engineering as a master.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, she's just finished university here at Portsmouth with me, and then now she's doing genetic engineering.
Wait. So you're back at the university? I didn't hear about this.
No. We both finished at the same time. She's now going to do genetic engineering, master's in genetic engineering.
I'm asking about you because last time I checked, you were out of college, out of university.
Yes. Yep, I'm fully out of college. May unfortunately have to go back at some point to do a master's myself, but going to stay away as long as I can.
So just out of curiosity. Well, I mean, I thought you dropped out of college, but you went back and finished. So good job. That's fantastic.
No, I didn't drop out. I did an internship.
Oh, yeah, right. But I thought you weren't going back. That was the whole thing. I was just like. You were so valuable that they told you have to stay here and work with us, but you managed to finish the degree anyways.
Yeah, they kind of did somewhere in between. I continued working with them while doing a degree at the same time doing my third year. So
okay, yeah. I did not know this. So congratulations on finishing the degree. It's really good on you. Yeah. You did that. I was concerned that you weren't going to do it. Let's move on now to somebody, the pilot in charge, somebody who's excited to talk to each and every one of us. Mark, how are you doing today?
Yeah, hi Steve. I'm doing well. Just came in from a few test flight with the new INAV 6.0, new test build, and yeah, we are getting somewhere. And I'm looking forward to announce a few things also during this call and have it in the hands of more pilots very soon.
Okay. That's right. And so that is one of the things we're going to lead off with. They have some interesting news about this. And I'm kind of curious to hear about how INAV is going to work out for this 6.0, when it's coming out, because there was some confusion as it was going to come out this year, is it coming out next year? And there's two different ways to go about fixing horizon drift. And you probably have some interesting updates in all of this. So can we jump right into that, please?
We can, but I think we should go to Darren first, right? So introduce.
Every time I'm not expecting it, it's like, let's go and talk to Darren.
I mean,
well, you got completely.
You introduced Luke, then me, and now Darren, and then Ricken.
Oh no, I was introduced first.
He was introduced first.
That was the first shock. It's usually
Oh, okay. Sorry, I missed that. I was looking at the chat. Sorry, my fault.
Shirts look the same. Yeah, we're just up for Halloween.
and I have still not ordered one. Yeah, shame on me.
Take a couple minutes, hit the pause button, go back and watch the start of the show. Get caught up.
Okay, guys. Yeah, so INAV 6.0 current development status. Yeah, I'm right now very much focused on the Horizon Drift fix. Not mitigation, fix. And I just did a few test flights today and played around with some settings, and we are really on a very, very good track. There's one very special maneuver a pilot can still do and cause some drift, but I think there's no way currently to optimize that. But actually, after I watched my DVRs back and forth, and I looked how that actually looks if you do this maneuver, it's basically doing a roll, stopping, pitching up, doing the next roll, stopping, pitching up, and that in a repeated succession. It looks crap. No one flies like that, and that's the only way I can still get the Horizon to drift, because of some weird G-forces that are introduced. But beside that, it's absolutely spot on. We have very good default settings that will also be posted in the release notes for people who update. I also did tests with GPS disabled. That's also very interesting, especially for line of sight pilots who might just use an INAV flight controller for pure gyro stabilization and maybe auto leveling with no GPS, no OSD, nothing. And it's very important that these planes are also flying reliably, and it did a really good job. What it actually does is it uses the reference airspeed. It's basically a guesswork of the flight controller how fast the plane could be right now without any GPS or pitot sensor input. And by that it can roughly estimate how the G-forces are in turns or so, and this works pretty well. Actually, currently INAV 6.0 with the with no GPS and just with this guesswork compensation has less horizon drift than the average 3.0 or 5.0 default setup.
Wow.
So yeah, it works really well. One important news that was discussed between Pavel and me, I had the idea that I post a link in the group, in the fixturing group, for people who want to test it. But then Pavel came with the idea, hey, let's just make a complete a complete beta release, basically not a release candidate, really a beta release that's not feature complete yet, to make more people test it in the field. And if everything goes well, we should see that release on the official GitHub and in the configurator during next week, if all goes well.
Wow, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
So a beta, not even a release candidate, just a complete beta.
Yeah, it's a complete beta. And let me just adjust my microphone because Henrik just said it's overdriving. I hope it's well now.
Well, we have to mention Henrik in every show. Henrik, how are you doing today? Good to hear from you.
I hope that's better now, but I can turn it down a little bit more if needed. So yeah, that's the current status.
Can we go back to one thing? I wanted to find out more about the non-GPS version of INAV.
It's not a non-GPS version. It's just if you do not set up GPS, the flight controller has no way to know how fast the plane is, and therefore the standard G-force compensation doesn't work to remove the horizon drift from the calculations. That's the only difference. Just if no GPS is set up, then this doesn't work, and then INAV has to work with more estimations.
Okay, yeah,
to keep the horizon level.
The one reason I'm asking this is I spent the last week watching turbine jets fly. it's clipping. I was talking to Mark there. Okay. So watching turbine jets fly, and those things, some of these jets are doing about 300 miles an hour, and it's very easy for them to go completely to the point where you can't barely see them. I mean, they cover so much ground so quickly. So they're, it's really weird when I see who covers the gyros, who's excited about it. There's really two ends of the spectrum. On the low end, it's the Horizon Hobby UMX planes that have the safe system where it has stabilization and people can't fly with this otherwise. And the people who also love stabilization are the people who fly these $30,000 turbine jets. So technology is something that they're excited about. If this is something where they had an opportunity to bring a plane back and not have it crash on the way back or return to home, that is somewhat accurate to the point where they can see the plane coming back, that would be really big news for them.
Yeah, I mean, turbine jets are a completely different level. We have one guy in our group who uses turbine jets actually with INAV, but the thing he does is mostly using the OSD to show the G-forces in his OSD. Or not in the OSD, no, on the telemetry to the radio, to get a warning if he puts too much G's on the plane. Because if you have a jet plane made of balsa wood and glass fiber, if you put too much G's, it will just disintegrate in midair. And that's what he is using it for. And I think also some basic stabilization. But not for GPS modes. I wouldn't do that just because of the speed. You have so much noise, you have so high frequency vibrations. I'm not sure if our standard flight controllers are so reliable on that.
Well, I don't know.
I think
they're very smooth.
I don't know exactly what the INAV developers' stance on this is, but I suspect there's some sort of clause of INAV should not be used on manned aviation or that kind of thing. And obviously, RC jets definitely aren't manned aviation, but I think it starts getting to that sort of level, when you've got something that's 50 kilos flying at a few hundred miles an hour. So it's a bit more than INAV was really made for.
Yeah, well, they have a thing where you cannot do FPV with them. You cannot fly those turbine jets with FPV and things like that. But more and more, they're...
So yeah, Lee had just noticed me that there was actually a miscommunication in the date. So he is not ready today, unfortunately. So yeah, I think the Halloween special is then just between us.
We're all dressed up. All right, who brought the candy?
I have none. I have beer.
You have candy beer.
Oh, cool. Well, that the line of sign pilots, the INAV would never work for something like planes that have put out sparks. The gas powered, fuel powered planes, they just shake and vibrate way too much to use it. But there's still a lot of electrics. EDFs are also. I didn't really realize how big of a market the EDFs have turned into, and how much better they've gotten in the last year or two. Have we seen anybody in the group really talk about EDFs? I thought I saw one guy talking about EDFs. Mark's typing away.
I think I've seen more turbines than EDFs, to be honest, in the group.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Mark will remember. I can't remember his name at this point, but yeah, there's a guy who does have 2 or 3 turbines on INAV now.
Wow.
But yeah, sorry, my mind's just gone completely blank. But yeah, I think that was awesome. But yeah, there was someone who put EDFs on things that didn't have EDFs to begin with. Not Luke with his Radian, but I think someone else put one on. Was it an AR Mini or something like that? Put an EDF on it.
Yeah, I think there was an AR Mini and also a Bixler 3 with EDF.
Ooh.
But it's 1 or 2 years ago when I saw that.
I've seen a Bixler with a rocket. That was a bit more exciting.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, nothing's faster than a Bixler, by the way. That's a joke.
Yeah. So. Yeah, so I would say then if we know now that Lee is not coming on today, unfortunately, we can go to the myths.
Let's get into it. Yeah, fantastic. I'm sorry to miss out on Lee. I'm looking forward to speaking with him. So let's get into the myths. We still have a fun show to get through anyways. So do we have a list of myths? Mark came up with like a dozen of them.
And actually, Lee was the one who had a full list of myths, but a few of them I also have. And of course, we want to see some of the things the chat knows about that are myths that are going around in the hobby for a long, long time and are actually not true or not the full truth. So one myth is that actually, I think Henrik told me it's not fully correct. For example, balsa elevons are always better. A lot of people say that because they are stiffer, they are more rigid, and don't flex on high loads. What do you think about that?
Like Darren's think first.
I don't know.
Also, elevons.
I think if you're trying to go beyond what the foam ones are for, then probably that's true. And I guess it also depends if you laminate the foam ones. There's a few sort of variables in there. But yeah.
Where do glassed elevons come into that? I mean, they're normally foam with fiberglass or carbon fiber around them. Is that balsa or is it foam?
That's opposite.
Well, the problem is that a lot of the foam elevons that are out there, some of the cheaper models, they do flex. And, was Andrew Newton who came up with the video where he would start putting in pieces of carbon fiber rods in there, very small ones to stiffen them up. And he would also put in things like credit cards or putting control horns on. I think the other issue is that sometimes the foam gets weak and your control horns start to pop out, and I've noticed there's a lot of slop and play in the control horns on those cheap foam elevons.
Yeah, I mean, I think from my point of view, is this myth is more about how things are from standard and how you're going to modify them. Because if you've got foam from standard and you're flying in the plane as it's intended, then the foam is going to be absolutely fine. But if you're trying to push beyond that, then it's like you're adding extra stiffness with carbon rods or whatever. You're not actually just basing it on that foam. And we all get our planes. We can all flex the elevons. But those two are both laminated, and there's a hell of a lot less flex in those. But I know it's still more flexible than balsa. So it's like, is this a thing for the standard control surfaces on the airplane, or if you're modifying it to make it better, and what is the ultimate way to make it better?
Yeah, so what Henrik told me and teach me is that there's one thing a lot of people often ignore. If you have a foam wing, like let's take the AR900 or the AR Pro for example, and you put balsa elevons on that, and you keep the wings completely stock, then you get issues because the balsa elevons always have to be laminated because they will just dissolve if they get wet, for example, or if you want to paint them, and you have to laminate them or you have to fiberglass them. So the elevons get very rigid and stiff. And if you then put them on a ring that has flex in its rings, then you add a lot of stress to the hinges. And this can become very dangerous if you put high G-forces and you do a lot of aerobatics, for example, because then the ring wants to flex, but the elevon doesn't want to flex because it's much stiffer, so you get a lot of stress on the outer hinges, and they can actually break off in flight. This is something you really have to keep in mind. So it's not the only, or the solution to get better elevons is not just replace foam with balsa. You either can, like Darren said, optimize the foam elevons, just laminate them like I did with the AR Pro, maybe add some carbon like Steve said. to still keep some flex in them together with the ring. Or if you use balsa elevons, you also have to modify the ring to make sure the ring gets as stiff as possible. Otherwise, you will get a lot of trouble. So balsa is not always the solution, but it is a better option, of course, if you do it right.
He was also big. Henrik was also big on having the putting on the tape. Which tape? Blender. Blender.
The hinge covering tape.
Right.
The aerodynamics. Yeah.
Yeah.
That so, if you're trying to do something to get ultimate speed, then yeah, covering all the gaps will help with that. Yeah, Henrik is very big on aero.
We should just ask Henrik to come on the show since Lee's not here.
Henrik, get on webcam.
Yeah, get on the webcam. Jump on, Henrik.
Get your hunchback ass on the webcam.
It's the first time we actually invited people. It was like the Who when which was it? The Who that had it was Keith Moon who passed out on stage, and then they had someone from the audience come up and take his place for a couple songs.
By the way, Lee just told me he might be able to make it to the show in about 20 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Cool.
Out of order. So he will have a look to get on the PC roughly that time.
I tell you what, because this is his topic, so what we should do is we should really hold off on getting Lee on the discussing this a bit more. We can kind of vamp and go to some other direction in the meantime until Lee comes on. What I was thinking of is we had so much to talk about last show that Lee wanted to come on and talk about. He only had a certain amount of time. He wanted to come on and talk about the different HD camera systems that he was testing. We didn't really talk about what we were doing all summer long and all the different things we were working on. So what did you guys do on your summer vacation? I know Darren always appreciates being thrown on the spot, first.
I'm just thinking I've actually had a summer vacation.
Your time off of summer.
I just think National Lampoons whenever I hear that word. No, I mean, to be honest, I've not really done anything different. I've just been working on INAV, working on some planes, trying to go fast with that thing, which has been awesome. So yeah, Luke, I might actually need to speak with you about cutting down a prop to try and get a bit more speed out of it.
Oh, I'm sure we can give it a go.
Yeah, it should be fun. But yeah, it's I mean, the weather's been okay. It's been pretty decent up until recently. But yeah, didn't get to fly this weekend. Won't be flying next weekend because I am actually taking a vacation. But yeah, no, it's just same old, really.
Okay. Well,
by the way, Steve, I took that serious with the invitation of Henrik, so I sent him the link. If he wants to come on, he can join in.
Yeah, I love it. I'm sure he's all shaved and ready to go. There's nothing more he enjoys being put on the spot. And that's the thing, we might just start inviting random people, like Rich Adams. I think you're out there as well. Let's put him on too. So hopefully Henrik jumps on. It'd be great to have him until he can be our substitute Lee until we actually get Lee. Then we'll kick him to the curb. All right, Luke, you've been gone for so long. People, we haven't seen you. First of all, the hair's looking great.
Yeah, people haven't really seen me. I've just been solidly working for the past 3.5 months or so. I got back from Canada, being the last thing I was doing with work, on Wednesday, and now I have a month and a half off. So this is the start of my summer vacation, or whatever's left of it.
And you were promising to build a bunch of things and fly them. I think you got the AR Mini to play with that and fly.
I have so many projects. I have a big. I can't even remember. It's 150 mil or 200 millimeter EDF that I want to put in something, with a big 14S power system, something along those lines. What else? I want to do some AR Pros. One that I showed 3 or 4 months ago. Twin AR Pros. I think I want to build probably 3 of them now, though. 1 with ArduPilot, 2 with INAV. But bunch of stuff.
2 will work. That's great.
Yeah, more work, exactly. Well,
No,
at least this is work that I want to do.
I said 2 of the 3 will work fine.
Oh my
gosh.
2 of the 3 will work.
Hey, Henrik.
Look who it is. This is it. This is look who joined us. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the world famous Henrik.
The grumpy old nerd. And he has a story to tell us.
Yes. Henrik, can you hear us? He's not speaking. Okay, so we'll get back to put a thumbs up when you're ready, Henrik. We'll let you know. We'll come back to you. All right. So, Mark, what have you been up to?
Right now?
Yes. No. This since we took a break. You know, we had a month off, gave everyone time off, and then
back. During the break, I mean, I was the main reason for the break in the first place, because I was not at home at that weekend, because I was going to a FPV trip to West Germany, close to the Netherlands border, and I was there in Meppen, Funpark Meppen, like the last 2 years before that as well, and that's an old gas power plant, where we fly FPV wings and copters, mostly copters, but some of us also have FPV planes with us. We dive the big cooling tower or the power plant main building. There's a big desert area with sand. We go for low altitude cruising. We have chased each other. Yeah, we had a lot of fun there. And from there, I met Glenn. So he came from England. We met at Meppen. He stayed there over for 1 night or for 2 days. And from there, we drove back to Halle, back to my home, and we spent a nice week here doing FPV stuff, flying together, building together, crashing together, literally. So, I had some great time in this Wingtalk free month. I planned to go to England as well for a week. Unfortunately, that didn't work out because of document issues I had. But I will do that in the future, that's for sure, because I want to see some of his flying locations as well.
You're on the no-fly list from the FAA. Finding out about you.
We wanted to go with the ferry, but unfortunately, the last time I looked the information up was last year, and back then it was possible to go to England with an EU passport. Unfortunately, that's not possible anymore. You need an international travel passport, and I didn't have one.
Oh.
Yeah, so that wasn't possible to go to England. They would have sent me back.
Yeah, Brexit fucks more stuff up.
Yep, definitely. So I think
Brexit fucked the parcel from Brady Lee from Crash Kits up. So all 10 spec wings didn't arrive in Germany because of customs.
Hey, look who it is, ladies and gentlemen. It's Henrik.
Yeah.
How you doing? Thanks for joining us today for being an impromptu guest.
I couldn't keep from it, you know.
Peer pressure.
Yeah, pressure. Yes.
We enjoy having you.
I'm officially a member of Sad Society of Aircraft Demolishers because I was gliding down my staircase. So yeah.
Without a plane.
Without a plane, yeah. But I spread my wings, and but it didn't really work out.
You're like 90% of the way there, Henrik.
Yes, already, yeah.
You and Darren, man, the same kind of damage in the same area.
Mine's a lot less extensive.
Yeah, but it could get worse, you know.
If you're listening at home, they both have gashes over their left eyebrows. So and they had nothing related to INAV. So the personal damage So
Yes.
fantastic. So
Yes.
what have you been flying lately, Henrik?
Actually, nothing, because I can't stand having goggles on my face, as you can imagine. I was more or less flying my trusty old AR wing the last month, because I was after this D-shot problem, and I didn't want to risk any other plane falling down until I had solved that issue. And I'm really glad that I had the opportunity to rehabilitate INAV, because it's actually no INAV problem for 90% of the cases, and this was just noise on the ESC signal cable that made the ESCs freak out, power cycle in flight, or just die in flight. So it's mainly noise on the signal line.
Yeah, I also heard that you and Mark actually met in real life. This is the first time any of us have ever met in real life.
No, we have met before. I think this summer, or the spring, or what was it?
Yeah, I think it was in May or so.
Yeah, something. Because my current workplace is about an hour by car from Mark. So this May we had the opportunity to actually fly, and my schedule wasn't that tight. So he showed me one of his spots, and we did a little chasing. And one of my wallpaper photos for my Facebook profile was actually from that flying. I think this might be the best promotional shot for the multiplex Easy Star anybody has ever made. So thank you again, Mark. This was an awesome shot. And of course we met in Meppen. I actually grew up in that area, like 10 kilometers from there, and I knew that old gas plant really, really good, because I was in the fire brigade when I was young, like all the boys of my town were, and we actually visited that on an annual basis, just to know where things are. And so it was kind of cool for me that I had the opportunity to fly there. Hi, Lee.
Hey, hi everybody.
How's it going? Well, Henrik, nice talking to you. We'll see you later.
Yeah, bye.
No, I'm joking. You can stick around. Of course, we always.
I was your sideshow,
The first question I have, Lee, are you feeling well today?
Well, I thought it was going to be another couple of weeks, so obviously I haven't got ill yet. So I'm feeling really good. So yeah, everything's working fine.
Surprise Wingtalk with Lee.
That was all Steve's plan.
It's worked flawlessly. The disappointing thing is I had a whole gig lined up for what I thought was the Halloween show, with kind of makeup and the whole thing. So the kids will have to benefit from that on Halloween night instead. How are you guys?
Doing good, thank you.
We're doing great. Thank you so much. Yeah, so it's great to have you. Filling in. I'm sorry there was a miscommunication on the date and time, but it's great to have you show up anyways. A little unprepared. I guess we all are to some extent, but I like these kind of shows because it's off the cuff. So we have the topics that you came up with, which was a fantastic one, which were myths. And we were talking about we only did one, and I said, let's stop it because I heard you're coming on. So we were talking about that balsa wood hinges are stronger than the foam hinges on a plane. No, it's better to put balsa wood hinges on. So what is your thought on that?
To be honest, I use the hinges that are easiest because I want to be flying rather than fixing stuff, even though I'm the guy that keeps making lots of YouTube videos on exactly how to do that. I was introduced to something called blend tape.
Yeah.
Trappy, actually, at TBS, when I was building my first Caipina, I was asking him, how do I attach the elevons, because they came as two pieces of balsa wood, and I'd never had that before. And he just said, one of those off-the-cuff remarks, as people do, oh, just get blend tape. So I thought, I misheard it, so I spent a day searching on Google because obviously I know what Blenderm tape is. Eventually gave up, went back and went, because we were on a call rather than typing. I said, what tape was it again? And he typed it Blenderm. I was, okay. And I've never looked back. I've used CA hinges, I've used balsa hinges, I've used foam hinges. But Blenderm tape for me is super quick. It's easy. It doesn't deteriorate in UV light. It stays super sticky and very flexible. So these days on decent planes that I quite like, I'll actually cover the hinges even before the foam hinge gives up. I'll actually reinforce it with Blenderm, and when it inevitably does let go, the Blenderm is there to kind of keep it in place while I try and land the thing. So for me, I would say if anyone argue about hinges, I'd go, no, Blenderm, drop the mic and walk off stage, because you know what, it's kind of my go-to. There's two rolls of it there. I always have them ready to go, because I guarantee the day I run out of Blenderm, the day after when I go flying, I'll rip off at least 3 control surfaces, and then I'll be stuck for a week.
Yeah. So
okay,
Blenderm.
Before any more is said,
go for it.
You talked about Blenderm tape. I raise you transport tape.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah. See, there we go. I'm glad you recognise the superiority. So transport tape.
Is that the one with the little holes in?
No, it's the one that tears across the roll without. It has So transport tape is Blenderm tape. It's exactly the same thing, but let me just do a quick little demonstration if I can find the end of it. You can tear it across cleanly. It's like perfect. It's actually really good. So yeah, you've got a bit of it, and you can just tear it like that.
Wow.
So yeah.
That's
so
awesome.
You don't need a pair of scissors. That's the only difference. So transport tape, not Blenderm tape.
Right. And then I guess the question really was about wooden control surfaces like ailerons or elevons. Do you feel like there's any benefit to be had to replace the foam ones with wood?
I only do that when the foam ones are completely US and have been destroyed to the point where they're no longer repairable easily. I do think they are slightly superior on larger models where you get lots of flex within the control surface. I do find that because they kind of move as one. But I'm not one of those people that has any really lots of hills that I want to die on about building and the hobby stuff.
Right.
Because I've tried so many different things and so many different things have worked, is that it's really dangerous. I mean, one of the things which was kind of all around this, because it was Mark and I who were talking. See, Mark's left his board already. Mark and I was talking about this idea of these myths and misconceptions. And I did a little comment, because of course I thought I had another 2 weeks for the show, right? So I was still prepping. But I did a comment on YouTube saying, what are the common myths and misconceptions? And had some fantastic answers back. But one of the things I kind of learned from that was that I've identified my 2 least favorite words in the hobby. And my 2 least favorite words in the hobby are best and better. Right? Because I've just, I had a video up the other day where Marcus, the guy behind eCalc, and we did a whole thing where I've got a 3D printed wing. They have a recommended power system. And I was like, is it the best for how I want to fly? But when I posted and said, do other people have any other setups that they like, I got as many answers as there are flavors of ice cream and Baskin Robbins, right? So everyone had their own idea of what best was. But the problem is that unless they know what I want to do with the wing, or the person giving me the advice understands what are both frame of context, best and better are meaningless. It might be more endurance, it might be easier launches, it might be faster top speeds. What's best for me and what's best for you is completely different. And a lot of the time, I think we forget as a hobby, particularly in places like the forums and definitely in places like YouTube, somebody will post something that they love and they're really passionate about, be it CA hinges, Blenderm. What was that tape, Matt? Luke, sorry?
Transport tape.
Transport tape, which I'm going to get and try, by the way. Somebody will say something about something that they love, and somebody will immediately come along and go, "Oh, this is much better." but without that frame of reference about why is it better. Better is a really subjective term. Unless we know, unless you know what I'm trying to do with the model, how can you tell me what's better? Because it absolutely might be, but if your better's higher top speed on a wing and mine is a longer flight time, then it's not. So it's one of those things that reading through a lot of things that I kind of noticed. Have you guys got any thoughts on that?
I have to say, after you told me that that you hate these words, I also started to hate these, because just recently I got the GoPro 9 as a replacement for my destroyed Hero 6, and after that I decided, okay, if you go GoPro, then I go all in. I will also get ND filters and all stuff, and then I checked, hey, what are people using for settings? What are the recommendations? And everything, I look at WhatsApp groups or even some video titles that say, these are the best settings for your GoPro 9. You will not use anything else or whatever. And I think, no, that can't work, because I'm in a few WhatsApp FPV community groups, for example. Everyone says, hey, shutter 180 degrees, 30 FPS or 60 FPS, 4K, and that's the perfect settings. And ISO to maximum of 400, or even lock it at 100. But that's actually bullshit, because you want to have a 180 degree shutter for complete cinematic footage. That's true. If you do like hand filming, you do slow pans, for example, but then you cannot stabilize. If you stabilize, like in Gyroflow or even with Hypersmooth, and you have a 180 degree shutter, you just get blur as soon as you have vibrations. You cannot use that on a fixed string, on a small fixed string that's very nervous. You get blur all over the image. And then I found a video that's really, really great of a guy who does bicycle and motorcycle videos and also action sport videos, and he said, hey, in this situation maybe a 45 degree shutter is perfect, or a 20 degree shutter. He makes so much things different, but there is no best settings, and it's the same for fixed strings, for example. There's, for example, no best, even if you have the exact same plane copied screw by screw, there's not a perfect pit tune or the best pit tune for every plane or for every copter. If I want to have a fixed string or a plane I want to bash around, for example, I want to use very low pits because I want to fly the plane like it's intended to, as close as manual as possible. If I want to have like aerial photography or cinematic footage, even in windy condition, then I use a sharper pit tune to have more stabilization and less influence on from the wind, and then I can better stabilize the footage. So it's the same principle. There is not a best settings. It's just a good setting for the specific situation or situation or needs.
I think that's a great example, because I think unless you know the situation for the pilot that you're offering the advice to and how that differs from where you're coming from, without that context, it just becomes a meaningless list of settings. Because for me, I fly lots of wings, and my you can't really. That's the nose of my Dolphin behind me. It's walk snailed, woo, and it's also had a new Maytech flight controller put in it. Still waiting for the full INAV on-screen display, Mr. D. But I put a new flight controller in it because I want the on-screen display. However, the thing with that is that I don't fly 2 feet above trees or down hedges close enough to kind of paint the bottom of the wing green with all the leaves I'm snapping off. So I'm not interested in those settings. And it's, if somebody that's the way they fly on a quad, and the action camera that they have on their quad performs best in that situation, telling me those settings for me, who flying at 400 feet, over the countryside in slow, lazy turns in the sunshine, is just not going to work. I mean, it's a great example. So what other things did we have on the list? Because I'm quite happy to go away and quickly try and go through my notes and see what else I had written down while you guys run through the other stuff.
Yeah, I think go through your list first. I mean, it was basically your idea, and everyone liked it. So you can just bring your ideas in, and
we might not have the list ready, is what I'm hearing. So
and I will also monitor the chat if the chat can come up with some myths they know about.
That's a great idea. Anyone in the chat, if you have something that you're in the forums or on YouTube that you hear repeated again and again and again that is demonstrably not true for your experience, it would be great to hear from that. Because the thing is, again, as we've already discussed, things are very subjective, right? So things that are good for me that I love, blender and tape, or anything else, it's somebody else is going to have a different experience. And the thing is, as well, is that the experience, the things that we're talking about are based on our own experience. So if I get a plane in for myself and try and fly at the field and have a horrific time with it, I'm going to have a really poor opinion of that. Now, I'm probably not going to, in a forum, tell other people they're idiots because they like that plane, because I'm quite happy to put my hand up and say, I may have done something dumb. I may have got the central gravity in the wrong place. I may have got the throws in the wrong place. I may have the wrong prop or motor. I'm not flawless. But similarly, if I have a plane that I love, going back to the example of things like the AR Wing Pro, loads of pilots love it, but some pilots absolutely hate it because you can't have one thing that's universally good for everybody. So just because you have something that you like doesn't mean that everyone else has to like it as well. Passion's good, but there's a lot of room in the hobby for differences of opinion.
I've got a one myth that is kind of universal for INAV. We've seen this for many, many years. So if I may throw one out myself, that is the feeling that you don't really have to set up a plane super well because your flight controller is going to fix everything.
Yeah.
We've seen that time and time again, haven't we?
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Steve. You're playing my song.
The basic mechanics of an airplane don't really matter as long as you have a flight controller. So if your CG's off, if your control surfaces are not exactly lined up well, the plane has inherent issues on manual, and the flight controller will fix it.
I mean, I could say if you can't build a plane, then use autopilot.
Autopilot getting the love today.
I mean, let's be honest. It is so aggressive in its stabilization and pits. Just the way how it works, you can even fly the worst tail-heavy, bad aerodynamic planes with autopilot, and it will just stay in the air. That's
A co-worker of mine built an S800, and he'd never built a plane before, and it has to be the worst built plane I've seen. Not they did anything particularly wrong, but just everything was a little bit wrong. He put RG-Pilot in it, and it just flew fine. Like he never even did a manual flight or even an angle mode flight. It was just straight to GPS modes, and it just went flying around. Of course, not amazingly, but it didn't experience any of the problems that you'd expect from how badly it was put together.
Yeah,
this is quite an interesting approach because it actually matters from where you're coming from. We see a lot of people coming from quads, and if you're flying a mini quad, the tuning, the flight controller, etc., is the most important thing. But if you have an RC plane background and you are used to mechanically tuning a plane, then you're coming from the complete opposite approach. And if you are able actually have the skills and to actually build a plane and mechanically tune it, it flies so much better, even with a flight controller on it. And it's much better to invest my favorite subject in some good servos than to invest into the biggest flight controller and the best GPS you can get.
Yeah,
perfect, fantastic. Darren, your thoughts on this?
I sort of lost track, but yeah, I will say with the RG-Pilot thing, Luke was there when I made in my S800, which was set up all right, and yeah, RG-Pilot does just very much sort of dull things down. I think I mentioned to Luke.
Yeah, sorry. I should say when I say it flew without any of the problems, I didn't mean it flew nicely or anything like that. But it just flew how ArduPilot wanted it to fly.
Yeah.
Which, in my opinion, the ArduPilot defaults for angle mode and all that kind of thing are almost guaranteed to crash a plane just with how little maneuverability you get. If you're going towards a tree, you will hit it because you just can't avoid it.
Well, no, the thing I think I was mentioning is like in the manual they have different levels for doing the auto tune, and I think it was on the default something like level 5. And then they say,
and if you put up
level
9,
7, you
need
need to be an expert. And I was on level 7. It's like, hang on, this thing is still really slow and sluggish.
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, I still need to actually play about with that a bit more. Maybe put it on level 12 or something.
My standard is just putting on level 9 straight away, and that's like a good trial kind of setting.
There's also this guy on YouTube, I always forget his name, who also works in that company who built these big cinema drones. I can't remember his name. He also does the solar plane project.
Don't know him.
Yeah, everyone knows who I mean, but can't remember the name. But he, for example, uses autoplane on everything. He makes sometimes just a sheet of foam board with 2 servos, puts autoplane on it, and it flies smooth. And sometimes he uses one of these crap builds and puts it into manual, and it basically just tumbles down.
Wait, you want about Daniel
unstable.
From RC Test Flight?
Yeah, RC Test Flight, exactly. And sometimes he puts he then switches into manual mode, and it's unflyable, it's tail heavy, or it tumbles down back into fly-by-wire A, and it stabilizes and just flies smooth. It's crazy. Of course, you can never do that with INAV, because that's not the way INAV PIDFF controller works. INAV flies the plane like a manual pilot would do with an gyro stabilizer in it, with a simple gyro stabilizer based on the PID controller. That's basically it. So I think INAV cannot fix crap planes. The better the plane is, the better it will fly, even with a flight controller in this case.
So INAV is kind of like a gloss, putting on a nice wax after a car that's nicely painted. If you put it on something where the car paint's peeling off, the wax isn't going to do much for it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, that sounds great. We came up with a lot of really good ideas. What I'd like to do, since we're coming up close to the break time, why don't we take a 3-minute break and let's refine the list a little bit more and come back and hit it strong with Lee's list of things to talk about. So let's do that.
Sounds good.
In 3. Hey everybody, we're back. Well, most of us are back. It's like the Brady Bunch. There's 6 screens right here, and there's like 2 people missing. Well, one's starting to make his way back right now. Fantastic. We're back. We have a list now ready to go. Mark, what's the next one on the list?
Oh, the next one on the list. That's already a good one. Angle mode is evil because it hinders learning of flying. So what does the chat think of that, and what do you guys think of that? Steve?
Oh, me first?
Yeah.
So the idea is that angle mode hinders learning because the plane's pretty much always stable is the idea, right? With the gyros. So the idea is that when you're flying manually, you have the possibility to go into hard rolls and crash the plane, whereas angle mode pretty much keeps the plane flying. Is that the basic gist of it, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, as far as I understand that Lee's idea is just that that it hinders you from learning of proper RC plane flying.
Well, yeah, of course, angle mode is probably our version of angle mode is essentially the same thing as safe for Horizon hobby planes, which is something that is so stabilized that you can't possibly go wrong. I mean, safe is slightly different, but the whole idea is that you're pretty much confined as to how you have limited bank angles, and because of that, you're not able to roll the plane over. No, I think first and foremost, anytime you get a plane up in the air for the first time, your heart is racing, you're nervous as hell, and you're more bound to make mistakes. And what I've noticed in particular is that when people have their hands on the sticks and things start going wrong, they start really pushing to the extremes on the sticks. So the thing is, I guess it's the video game mentality. When things go wrong, if it starts dipping to the left, what they want to do is they want to pull harder to the right, or to the extent that the plane rolls over on itself. So anything that we have to make sure that this doesn't happen until you get the feeling of how a plane actually works is not a bad thing. But I guess the other question people have is, I've seen this one too, is we really don't need angle mode in INAV once you know how to fly.
I think the problem with angle mode is to find the exact right time to actually stop using it. You are actually learning how to fly. You gain a little muscle memory of what happens if you move the sticks in a random way. So I'm absolutely with you on getting that heart rate down for the first few flights, but you have to find the exact spot of actually not using it anymore, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one thing I've done is we actually now have the ability to turn off in certain radios, the ability to turn off everything but whatever control surfaces you wish to give to somebody. So when I teach someone how to fly, what I do is I turn off everything but ailerons first. And then I teach them, we're going to teach you how to make a turn. Because what I notice when people learn how to fly the first time, what they do is they're really nervous about turning, so they don't turn. And then what happens is the plane goes so far away that they can barely see it anymore. And then they have to turn. And then they go into spiral because they're turning so much it goes to the ground. So the idea of really learning how the control surfaces work, first and foremost, I think the one that's most crucial is the ailerons and or elevons if you're flying with a flying wing. So and that limited. The other way to do this, of course, is angle mode. That would limit the amount of bank angle you would have. So as long as it's something, I can see how somebody would not be excited about it later on, but once they know how to fly. But yeah, it's always good to learn how to fly.
So I think Henrik was spot on. It's just finding that position where it doesn't teach you bad habits.
Yeah.
Unless you want to spend your whole flight career just flying in angle mode, in which case, fair enough, do what you want. But yeah, getting into acro or manual will actually teach you how to fly the plane properly.
I think some of this question from when I asked it came not only from the fixed wing guys but also from the multi-rotor guys, and I think the multi-rotor guys also have a much stronger opinion about this than maybe the fixed wing side of the hobby, because you're absolutely right, Steve. You know, people like Horizon Hobby have SAFE, and it's a fantastic way to help those pilots that don't have the benefit of somebody to put them in a trainer gear setup where they can, you know, they can kind of give them control of individual control surfaces. It de-risks those initial flights and tries to make sure that their £200 investment or $200 investment in their new plane doesn't last a whole 5 seconds before it explodes in a confetti shower of foam. I think, you know, angle, my own personal opinion about angle is, Henrik is absolutely right. I think there's a point at which you have learned angle is all going to tell you, and then by going into, personally, I get people to go into Horizon mode first, which kind of still gives you the benefit of angle, because angle gives you two things, right? It limits your pitch and it limits your roll angle to 60 degrees, whatever it is. Can't remember off the top of my head. It means you can't flip and roll stuff, which is good if you're a 6-year-old kid and you've been given the controls of your dad's plane for the first time. You know, that's all good. But the other big benefit is that if you let go of the sticks, the model will self-right and self-level, and that, for a new pilot, when they're really getting into trouble, can be great. But the danger with that is that muscle memory can be learnt, where when it all starts to go wrong and you start panicking, as well as starting to swear at the top of your voice so everyone else in the field knows something horrible's happening, you let go of the stick. Whereas when you move on to other modes, letting go of the stick is the last thing you want to do. You need to remain calm. So there is a point at which, you know, you kind of need to let go. It's like the training wheels on when you were learning to ride a bike. However, I personally don't have an issue with those pilots who fly in angle, who love angle, who feel that that's enough for them and they love and enjoy the hobby, and they put their little toe in maybe Horizon or acro mode or manual mode. I'm talking more about quads now in this particular example, and have a really bad example or crash or whatever, just saying, you know what, I'm happy in angle. If you're happy with that and you don't want to, and you know what, and you're enjoying the hobby and you're flying safely and you're loving what you do, no problem with that at all. But as somebody who flew in angle for probably too long, I'll put my hand up because I do a lot of filming stuff, and angle's great for filming. Not fast stuff, but for kind of cinematic over the countryside, angle's great. When I started to move away from that, it was almost like a relearning thing, because I probably stayed a little bit too far in it. With a plane, if you're a plane guy and you've known planes and you run INAV on planes and wings, I would say I personally wouldn't use angle on a plane unless you are teaching somebody to fly and you want that limitation of the pitch and the roll so that they don't, roll it straight over onto its back and straight to the ground. But as a plane guy, once you've got your plane properly set up, see the previous answer about a well set up plane, manual mode is what I fly my INAV wings in 90% of the time. The only time I'll put on Horizon or something like that is if it's a really windy day and I just want a bit of help on the approach so that I don't tip stall, as I'm getting kind of below the weeds.
I mean, from my perspective, as you already said, Lee, it depends what your final target is. That's the first point. If you are just happy with that, flying in angle mode, or maybe flying in navigation modes like cruise, then it's totally fine. Also on a long shot. But also if you want to develop into acrobatic or manual flight, it also depends if you fly FPV or if you fly line of sight. I think angle mode is very helpful just for the first tries, for the first experience as a line of sight pilot, because with angle mode you can especially learn how to turn your plane if it approaches you, because then left and right is inverted if you look at the plane. And I think angle mode here can help that just in your head you learn, if you put the stick to the left, the plane will turn to the right if it approaches you. And this can also help you learn how to how to properly land, but you only should do that like a few times. As soon as you get in your head when you have to turn left and when you have to turn right as a line of sight pilot, and you want to go further, you have to switch into acro mode or into manual as soon as possible, because otherwise you get this rough stick handling. You just go full stick all the time, but then if you switch into acro, you get into trouble. So
yeah, but unpopular opinion, just from my side, what are beginner planes for then?
I was thinking
because when I was standing on a grassy field as an 8-year-old with my balsa Yoo-hoo in my hands, it didn't have angle mode or something. I threw it as often as possible, just by my hand until it flew straight. And then I tried to give it control inputs, and the easy star, the big star, or whatever. If you have enough altitude and you let go of the sticks, it will self-right itself.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's true, but usually in this case you have some help at least to get the plane to altitude. If you fly the first time
by a motor.
Of course you can learn it without that. I mean, my first RC flight ever was a 3D printed Spitfire that was too fast, too agile, and the ailerons were inverted, and it had no flight controller. And I kept it flying for like 40 seconds or so before it finally crashed. So it is possible, of course, but I think still it's a helping tool just to get the first coordination going, and after that directly go into acro, go into manual, and then you can do what Henrik said for the navigation. Or for the line of sight flying. Some people are maybe have that in their head earlier than others. Some people just get too nervous and can do it right away, and then it's very helpful to have this little helper tool like angle mode or safe or whatever. It's just my opinion on that.
Okay, let's move on to the next question or the next comment here. So
the next thing from the list is Hall sensors are better than potentiometers. Speaking of radios in this case. This is a really interesting one.
No. All right.
Who wants to say something?
Not the guy who's paid to say something.
Okay, so why don't we take a quick poll? Who's running a radio with Hall effect sensors these days?
Oh, I am.
Not actively anymore, but I have one still.
Okay.
Honestly, I feel no difference. Unpopular opinion again.
It's not.
No, I fly a plane with Hall effect sensors, but I don't feel any difference. The reason I switched to Hall effect sensors is because the gimbals on the Taranis X9D, when you do the upgrade to the CNC gimbals, which do have a difference, they don't feel quite so sloppy. They come with with Hall effect sensors, but I don't believe there's any real advantage from the Hall effect sensors. It's just the aluminium, no slop.
It's the mechanics, not the sensor itself, that makes a difference.
Exactly what Steve said. They don't wear. I think that's the USP. Yeah. They don't wear, and that's...
Maybe.
I think that there are two important points that are basically pros for one or the other. The Hall effect sensors have no wear and tear. They work the same after 20 years, like on day one, basically, right. Because there is no contact surface that can be rubbed off or so. They just keep going and they just hold much longer. But the downside is Hall effect sensors are much more sensitive to noise and, of course, to magnetic fields. Sometimes it can be enough to just have two different batteries in your radio, like lithium ion cells with a steel casing, or LiPos with no steel in them, and you put them in your radio and you have to recalibrate because they have magnetic field distortions that can affect the sensors. I just had my TX16S disassembled because I had to do a little repair. I had to replace some switches, and I found that my Hall sensor on the pitch axis was clicking when I moved it. I didn't know why. It was just clicking, and it also wasn't fully linear anymore. And then when I disassembled the radio, I looked, and no joke, I found a screw that fell onto the sensor like months back when I did the last the housing replacement. I didn't notice it because the screw was just held down by the magnet, and the screw was altering with the magnetic field and made it non-linear anymore, and it was clicking sometimes when I moved it. So these are some side effects, and you don't have that on a potentiometer. And if you use a potentiometer radio regularly and you don't let it sit in fixed position for months or for years, they shouldn't get any issues until, of course, they are worn down. So that's just my point on that.
I think for me, some of this is about the fact that historically, back in the day before Hall effect sensors were on everything, Hall effect sensors were positioned as the Rolls Royce of gimbals. So you had the regular gimbal that you could have, and then you went and bought the Hall effect one, which was the big upgrade. And a lot of the stuff on the new gimbal, just as Luke was talking about, wasn't just the fact that it's not a potentiometer, it uses a magnetic field to detect the position of the stick. It also had things like proper ball bearing races, and it had proper CNC aluminium enclosure. Everything was built to a higher tolerance. So I think that lots of the stuff, I know when I moved from the original potentiometer style sticks and I kind of got my first Hall effect sticks, they did center better, but some of that centering is because of the higher tolerances of the way they were put together. So I was like, oh, these feel really nice. And a lot of the Hall effects gimbals also had the ability to adjust things like how spring tension and stuff like that, which the cheaper ones didn't. The issue, I think, going forward is that whereas Hall effect used to mean the Rolls Royce of gimbals, everything is now Hall effect. You don't get all of that close tolerance CNC machined aluminium billet. You're not getting all of those, very high quality ball bearing races for all of the gimbals, and everything is beautifully set up with all of the adjustments and stuff. You tend to find that it's called Hall effect, but actually it's kind of like the gimbals we've always had. It just has a different sensor. And I think sometimes when you read stuff in the forums, if it's from 4 or 5 years ago, they may be talking about what Hall effect used to be, the byword for quality, rather than what it is now, which is kind of almost the default, unless it's the very cheapest radio.
Yeah, the interesting thing about is that if you compare a potentiometer and a Hall effect sensor, how they are built mechanically, a potentiometer is much more complicated than a Hall effect sensor. So it's also, if you hadn't had the tools already and all the manufacturing ready, it would be more expensive to manufacture than a Hall effect sensor. Same thing with cars, for example. You see the dashboards that are completely screens right now, because screens are just cheaper to manufacture than a dedicated dashboard with instruments on it. So that's, I think, more or less the reason why Hall effect sensors are more or less the default today.
And also, one thing I want to add, I think the reason, or the main reason why all radios nowadays use Hall effect sensors, it's not basically because they are better, it's just the price. It's purely cheaper. The price. It's the same like for example, for OLED displays. If you looked for OLED displays like 15 years ago, you paid like for a smartphone with OLED displays like 200 euros more, just because the display is so expensive. Now you have them in any device. You have them in PC monitors, in TVs, in smartphones, everywhere. They are just that cheap. Nowadays, OLED displays are sometimes cheaper to produce than a normal LCD. And the same for these sensors. Everywhere on the world, in every type of electronics, we get more and more Hall sensors. They get cheaper and cheaper and cheaper to produce. And after one point, they are just cheaper in our radios than a good quality potentiometer. But if you compare a high quality potentiometer and a Hall effect sensor gimbal, you won't notice any difference in precision. Maybe even the potentiometer will be the better one because it's not that noise sensitive.
Lee, you're going to say something?
Just talking about this, as an electronics engineer, I always have a can or two of this stuff around. This is something that's called switch cleaner / lubricant. Sounds a bit wacky, but it's something that, you know, when with your stereo, right, and where it has a potentiometer for the volume, and you turn the volume up and you get that horrible crackling, popping noise.
I had that on many a guitar amp.
Right. Well, you know what? This is exactly why I got this. You will like this, Mr. D. So this stuff.
Well, I thought Darren kind of liked that crackling on the guitar. I thought that was like all part of the experience.
No, I just like it loud.
you turn up to your live show and you got to like turn it a bit to get all that crackle, get everyone ready.
I could use that to get my rotary encoder on my old ISDT Q6 back running, because that's all over the place.
Yeah. So this is one of those sprays that you spray on switches, and then it would get rid of that crackle. So of course Darren isn't going to want that, because all his stuff goes up to 11 anyway. But
it's one nowadays, isn't it?
He just puts gasoline on it.
If you have a radio that has either a switch that is a bit sticky, or a 6-position encoder that doesn't work very well, or even anything with a potentiometer like the older style things, when they start to misbehave, my advice would be buy yourself a can of this stuff, and then just spray it onto whatever it is. You're going to have to take the radio apart, spray it onto the potentiometer, and just move the control, and it will clean and sort it out. This actually was genuinely bought for an amp that I got, a big double speaker amp for the guitar many, many years ago, and it had been sat in the garage for probably 2 years before I inherited it. And every control just sounded like it was running on concrete. This is really good stuff. So if you have that issue, there is something you can do. You just don't use WD-40, because it leaves an insulating layer on the contact. If you get some of this, it's called switch lubricant cleaner. Give it a spray, operate it. It'll be back to fantastic condition.
Yeah, I mean, I bought a Laney amp from a car boot sale, and when I got it home, every single dial, even like the tone, was causing crackles. But yeah, some electronic cleaner works true.
I think we can go to the next one at this point. Lee, maybe you explain that one. You need whatever for long range. I think it was regarding the RC link, right? Or frequency stuff?
I think the next one that the guys have been talking about in the chat with was the myth that it's impossible to learn how to do anything without a YouTube video to walk you through it.
Oh yeah, that's good.
Now, as a YouTuber, I don't think I shouldn't have any horse in this race, but I'm interested in what you guys think, because the only thing I'll say before I kind of shut up is that if you always need a YouTube video to show you how to use it, how did the YouTubers find out?
We're certainly not reading manuals for most FPV planes, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's actually why I like Darren's stuff so much, because Darren makes the effort, and when he just doesn't, when he makes a video about something, he also writes a blog. And I can read stuff, and I have my time to understand stuff. I don't have to pause the video and repeat it all over again. I just read the blog and I understand it. I think it's like a forgotten skill, just to read stuff so that people understand it.
Can I jump in on this topic, because I have a lot of insight in this one in particular. As a guy who spent the last 3 months going to hobby stores around the United States, the one thing I've discovered is that there's really no more hobby stores around the United States. It's a dying breed. And what it was when I first tried to get in the hobby back in the 1990s was you take your plane to the counter at the hobby store, and the guy behind the counter knew what we were talking about. He understood what the plane was. He could explain to you how CG works. He explained to you how the control surfaces work and everything else. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people are they learn by example. Otherwise, why do we have classrooms? Why do we have teachers who instruct us? Because if we just left kids with a pile of books, they wouldn't learn anything. Would not be curious enough. You kind of have to have someone to help engage with it. What I discovered is that the hobby store, the expert at the hobby store, is now replaced by the YouTube content creator, and it is so important in this hobby, especially. This is a hobby. This is not part of your career. At 8 a.m, you're not going to work, sitting down, looking through a manual, learning how to read stuff. If someone can learn in 10 minutes, you get the answer, learn how to do stuff, that's so much better than, I think it engages people in the hobby more than anything else. Mark.
I would add something to that because the wording of this myth is very important here. Because what he actually said in his myth, it's impossible to learn how to do anything without a YouTube video to walk you through it. And I think that's a big point. There are a lot of YouTube videos, especially in our hobby, who really just walk you through it. So they basically do something and want you to just copy them. But by copying them, you don't learn anything. You don't know why you do that. I think it's much more important to have YouTube videos that explain stuff like why or how is an ESC working? How is the ESC controlled from the flight controller? And by learning these details, then you can figure out how to connect it, for example, or how to configure it. I think this is much more important than just YouTube videos who show you step by step how to wire everything up until it works. For example, if you have a build video of a quad, then you see that guy, okay, he put that red wire to that plus pad, he put that TX wire to this RX pad, without explaining why he does that. You learn nothing. You still cannot build your own quad afterwards. You can build an identical one, but as soon as you have another flight controller, you are sitting there and don't know what to do because it has another board color, for example.
It's an interesting comment, Mark, because there are two camps that my videos tend to fall into. There's the regular stuff that everyone does, which is the fat shark killer, that kind of, that thumbnail,
game changer.
Right? Game changer, exactly, yeah. And then two days later, here's the 10 things that are wrong with this system. So I also do those kind of videos. And the interesting thing is that, you might get, several thousand views in a day on those kind of, hey, fat shark killer, game changer videos. But you might get 30 videos on that, how an ESC works. Or I did a series in the middle of lockdown because a friend of mine was saying lots of people at the field, building quadcopters in this case, want to know how the FPV system works, wants to know how the control system works, and wants to know how the power system works. So I made 3 videos, a triptych that kind of all hang together, that go through each of those, right from the sticks on the radio, through the channels, blah, 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 right, the whole thing. And the interesting thing is, if you look at the videos that have got millions of views, they're not the, hey, fat shark killer videos. They're the ones that are still being watched, like from 2014, where I did a video on how an ESC works, because that stuff is evergreen. And that's the stuff, you're absolutely right, that we blow past in the hobby because we want to get to the new action camera. But all the people coming into the hobby, particularly those who are unfamiliar with all the acronyms, because this is an acronym heavy, all hobbies are, technical hobbies are, but we're really bad at it. And we immediately, when we start talking, just start talking almost in binary, and anyone trying to overhear what we're talking about would just think we're plotting some kind of something nefarious, because we go into 3 and 4 letter acronyms, and unless you know what the acronyms are, you can't search for stuff on the internet. And so, as somebody who makes these videos, the best thing you can do is learn what some of these things are called, because if you don't know that, you can't use Google. but also being able to use Google and YouTube searches really well to find the stuff that's out there, because that's what I do. When I come in here in the morning with my cup of coffee, I log into YouTube, and I do, you know, going back to that thing about 8 o'clock, I actually do this because, you know, my wife's gone to work at that point, so what else am I going to do? So I sit down and I log in and start answering questions. And I don't just have this encyclopedic knowledge in the back of my head that I just dump down Ardu pilot CLI commands or INAV setup tips or Betaflight or FRSCAR or whatever it is. A lot of the time, I have to refer back to my own videos from 4 years ago because I forgot, or I do Google searches, and I might not find the answer first time round, but it'll end up being a rabbit hole that eventually I'll find somewhere on the internet the answer. And if it's interesting enough and I get asked it enough, then I'll go, you know what, I'll actually make a video on that, like the INAV Walksnail OSD thing that I did the other day, because I've been trying to do that for 3 weeks and finally managed to get the planets to align, and I literally couldn't find that anywhere else. So I thought, you know what, okay, I'll be the guy that makes the video.
My problem always is on this kind of video where I always find me at. I want to make some kind of INAV setup series, for example. Then the first video is just about flashing the flight controller. Usually that's a 5-minute process. And then I do that and I think, I should maybe explain what happens if the DFU mode doesn't work. Then how do I find what target I need? Then there are 3 methods to find out what target you need. You can look on your flight controller. Maybe it's written on there, like for Maytag. You can look on the website of the manufacturer, or you can take the information from the CLI if you already have that firmware on there. So suddenly,
or if I have 6, you can just plug it in.
Oh yeah, that's great. But we will talk about that later in separate videos. But at the end, some simple task that's like 5 minutes in a how-to or walkthrough video, and here we are back at that topic again, suddenly needs so much background information that for a simple INAV setup process that could take 10 minutes, you suddenly have 1 hour of video footage, and you have to start to split it into multiple videos because it's just too much if you want to have or if you want to do proper explanations. Unfortunately, and that's what I see also on other YouTube channels, the walkthrough videos who really just do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. These are the more successful ones because people get lazy. I just look at the groups. How often are there questions like, how do I flash INAV? Instead of posting that into a Facebook group, they could have posted it into Google and found Darren's video. That's what I did. It was the first entry. So, yeah, but this is pretty much wrapped up, I think.
Well, just one point I want to make before we move on here is that there's an opportunity that I've actually had to do reviews on things in the past, and what I've discovered is other people who do reviews oftentimes don't really understand what they're looking at, like product reviews, and to really sit down and look at a topic and learn it and go in depth and make it something that's understandable for people out there to comprehend is something that is, I think, very crucial. It's a lot of time invested. And if someone like a Darren or a Lee or a Mark were to say, if we were to ask them, how much would it cost for you to sit down, learn this topic, make a simple 10-minute video, it's going to take you probably an hour to figure out how you can make that 10-minute video. How much is it worth? And it would be hundreds of dollars, if not more, and you're doing it for free. So a simple comment in the comment section saying, I learned something, thank you very much, goes a long way for these people.
Just one last addition.
Everyone's shaking their head. Yeah.
And I've got one last thing after you, but one last thing as well.
Okay. So the second last thing I want to add here is that Motorisen just added in the chat. I guess the spirit behind my myth was that just that I see a lot that people aren't willing to experiment, particularly when we are talking about software like INAV, Betaflight, OpenTX, HTX, etc., I would say 90% of everything I know about those was from opening the software, clicking around, and figuring it out through try and error. And yeah, that's basically also how I did most of my start approaches. Of course, sometimes you look something up, because if you try something else and you look into the configuration, into the parameters, for example, from a diff or from a DOM, you can just use the parameter and Google it. And then it shows you what it does. So better go this way. Just look it up when you are stuck, but try it out yourself and not just follow guides.
Can I just say one thing? As somebody who's done training for several decades, there is many different learning styles that people have as individuals. And this is one of the things that if you are a content creator where you're trying to impart knowledge, that you have to be cognizant of. And I know quite a few of us in this forum here are. Some people are very visual learners. I am, I will sit and draw things out to help me understand it. Some people are learning in lots of different ways, and for me, I think lots of people are. I've been one of those guys that if I didn't know how to do something, when I was a kid, my dad would kind of show me, whether it was swapping a carburetor on a car or replacing the clutch or doing some soldering or whatever it was. My dad would be the one that showed me, and then it was that kind of show one. Or tell one, show one, do one kind of mentality. And for me, I've kind of got it. I understand it. But for lots of people, they learn in other ways. And I come across loads of people in the hobby at the moment who have issues around the written language. And that means that all the online forums and things become incredibly complicated on top of things like having the acronyms. So I think it's really tricky. There's no one way, no one silver bullet to kind of impart the knowledge in a way that everyone's going to be able to use. So it's great that we all have slightly different styles, slightly different methodologies, and slightly different ways of getting the information out there, because the more there is, the more chance there is that you'll have the information in a way that that person can use.
Darren, you going to say something?
Yeah, I mean, it's just something that Henrik sort of posted, I think, partially as a little joke in the Skype chat, but it's related to YouTube as well. And it was something about YouTube is cheap actors for cheap marketing, which sort of leads me on to the myth for YouTubers or YouTube content creators make a killing, which is I actually worked out that my video that came out today, I sort of know how long it took me to make, and obviously I know how much revenue I get off of YouTube, and just to create the video, as an average, I get less than half of minimum wage. That doesn't include any of the replying to comments, general help in forums, any of that stuff. So no, YouTubers don't make a killing. We couldn't even survive on the income for the most part.
It's like the famous 1% that actually can.
Yeah.
I think it's a fallacy. It's something that I'm quite passionate about this. I think there was a period where lots of people came into the hobby and created channels to order to replace a day job. There are still a handful of those around, and we know who we're talking about, and they've made a great success at being a go-to for information and content create continually to do that. But lots of them, however, have withered on the vine and gone and done something else. Because to be blunt, if you want to make money out of YouTube, there are thousands of better topics than radio control to go and do it on, right? If I wanted to make money out of YouTube, I wouldn't be making videos on action cameras. I would be making videos on fishing, driving, motorcycles. There's loads of other things. If you look at what the big channels are about, not the ones that are all people doing silly things, there are hobbies in the world that are much, much bigger than radio control that would be a more natural place for us to spend our time. Yeah. I think I can speak for the three of us those of us on the call that do make content. We do it because we love it. If you get a couple of bob out the ad revenue, brilliant. That helps pay for some of the bits that we use in the hobby.
Software licenses.
Yeah, and software licenses. Yeah, and you know what? It is nice to get some of the stuff for free to review. But I think most people who are professional about it will kind of say up front and get that stuff in for review and say, I'm quite, I will do a review, but my opinion is my own. If I technically misrepresent the product, let me know. And Steve, you can vouch for this because you and I had the same chat when you were sending me the radio. I said,
absolutely.
If I misrepresent the product technically, quite happy for you to kind of let me know that's the case. If you don't like what I say about the product because I have a negative comment about it, it's tough because that's my opinion. But what I'll try and be is as balanced as I can. Like I said, if I wanted to make money, I would be doing this on motorcycles or classic cars or something else.
Yeah. And my father-in-law has it made. he does guitar instrumentals and does make a very good killing on YouTube. But it's something he loves doing, and that's how it all started. It's just a lot. He must be doing it for 12 years now. So he's built up the audience, and he makes enough that I could probably live off each month. But I think it's a rare example of someone who's not sort of selling out.
So maybe we should also move to the next one before Steve falls asleep.
Sorry, I've been on the road for the last 7 days.
Okay, so what do we have next? I think this is actually a quick one. Use odd space channels for FPV as that's the best option. I think that refers to multiple pilots at the same time, right?
Yeah, this is one that a friend of mine sent to me. When they're flying multiple people at the club, they tend to, lots of people just go, oh, it's dead easy. We just go odd numbers on race band, and then we'll be far enough away and it'll all work tickety-boo. We don't have to worry about anything. And I think it's the problem is with a lot of the bands in the hobby is that the separation of the channels is all equidistant, which is the worst thing you can do for harmonics and interference. So there's quite a few myths about FPV frequency selection. Anyone got any other comments on that?
I think Darren is a good source here because he programmed a tool on his website to exactly address this issue.
Yeah, which I probably need to update actually with the avatar stuff. But yeah, I mean, I didn't realize how much the harmonics sort of interfered. But yeah, it's an interactive tool, so you actually just click which frequencies you're using, and it will show in like grey bars wherever harmonics are, so you can pick like the clear spots. But yeah, it's definitely not just a case of odd numbers on race band. That will just lead to all sorts of trouble.
What I've always wanted, and I was bugging Greg at Menace RC about this, is that if we came into the hobby now with a clean blank piece of paper, rather than have all these inherited bands and frequencies that we have from the old days, with the Fat Shark band and bands E and bands A and B and all this other stuff that we've all had. If you looked at the spectrum, what would be the 8 best frequencies that we could choose? What would be the best 2 frequencies for 2 pilots? So to keep out the way of the harmonics, to keep out the way of other things, to keep out the way of other 5.8. And is there a way, is there a new band that we could create? And we tried to do it. We did a video about it, but I don't know, Darren, what's your thoughts on that, about having Darren's, because I've got something similar that I produce, but I love the fact that yours is interactive. And does it do the 50 gig mode on yours as well?
Yeah, I've got DJI 50 gig, so awesome. Put that on there. Sorry if you can't see this on Skype. I've just done it on screen share because Mark said the website was down, so I've just checked it. That was the main reason I had a look.
Yeah, for some reason it doesn't work for me. I cannot open the website right now.
Right. But yeah, I haven't got the avatar on there yet. So that's something I need to add because I think they're slightly different frequencies, but
they're pretty much DJI. If you can't get any of that information, Darren, I've got it here.
Cool. But yeah, it's quite interesting how they all interact.
Mark, next topic, please.
Next topic. Let's have a look. Where's the list? Here it is. This is also a good one. You need to start by building your own so that you know how to fix it. That's a good one. So what do you guys think?
Darren, what do we think? Well, Darren has a mouthful, so I'm not going to call on him. And I think Lee has a top. Looks like he has something he wants to add to this.
I tend to find that lots of people coming into the hobby used to, particularly with fixed wing, used to start with a Bixler or a Skywalker or something like that. It was one of those foamy planes, you know, it was like 60 bucks, 60 quid. You know, you get them in, you'd probably smash 3, maybe 4 of them. You know, those lovely long, delicate noses they had would end up looking, you know, like a boxer's face by the time it smashed it in the ground so many times. And then, you know, once those sacrificial planes had, you know, you'd learn all the lessons they were going to give you, you kind of moved on to something else. Interestingly, we actually maidened a balsa plane that my friend built after last Christmas. He used to build balsa when he was a kid. He'd seen some at one of the shows we've been to. It might have even been Western Park. So he got this balsa kit in, and it taken him 3 whole months to build this thing. Okay. And we maidened it last week. And it was one of those that didn't come with any information on throws, didn't come with any information on central gravity, didn't come with anything. So I had to eyeball the whole thing. So there's no pressure at all. It's only 3 months work, right? So luckily it flew, right? It was a little bit dodgy. I think actually it was slightly tail heavy because we could probably gone 10 millimeters towards the nose. But the bottom line is we got it back more or less the same number of pieces we flew it. But the issue with that is that if you spend 3 months building it, how do you know you're going to build it? Because as we said before, unless the plane is put together beautifully, it's not going to fly very well, right? So how do you know you're going to do that when you've never built one? I personally think that for planes, starting off with foam, getting your Bixlers, your Skywalkers, smashing the living jeepers out of them, and getting all those lessons and all that thumb time before you do anything else is not a bad way to do it. Similarly with quads, I think, you know, telling somebody you need to build your first quad, although, you know, as Mark says, there are lots and lots of YouTube series all about that. It's still not easy to set it up properly and to wire everything up. And it assumes, especially with modern electronics, that you know how to solder things. And that for me is one of the biggest issues that I bump into. People just, you know, if you've never soldered before, the first time you have to do it is on a pad that's 1 by 1 millimeter for the ESC connection isn't the best way to start.
I have something on this. I mean, in general, I agree that if you buy something or if you build something yourself, you learn better how it works than if you buy it complete, ready to run. I think this is a good thing in our fixed wing hobby because we don't get planes that are just ready to run with flight controller and everything and so on. I mean, you can buy ready to fly builds where you have your radio, your plane, you just plug the battery in and it works. But if you want to have all the nice flight controller things, you have to assemble it at the end. It would be nice to have a manufacturer to sell complete kits with everything included, like flight controller, ESC, motor, FPV cam, VTX, and so on. Everything in one package, but you have to assemble it yourself. That would be nice. If we look at the quad guys, they have ready-to-fly quads en masse on the market. You can buy so many things from Diatone, from Ishin, from whatever. A lot of manufacturers. They have so many quads they buy where you just plug in the battery and even the receiver pre-installed. I think this is really a bad thing in my opinion. And if something breaks, just let an ESC or motor burn up. if I see how many posts there are in German quad communities, they say, hey, one motor is just twitching and nothing doing anymore. What is the problem? yeah, either the motor is defect or the ESC. What can I do now? Yeah, sorry, don't buy a ready-to-fly quad, because they just don't know how to repair it. If the ESC gets destroyed, you have to disassemble the whole quad. And if you didn't assemble it before, then you have a problem.
There's also one thing I would like to add, and that's responsibility. Because let's be honest, we are playing with rather expensive toys, and those expensive toys, if you are able to spend money on those expensive toys, you are in a salary region where you can afford to also lose those toys. And if you go into some kind of electronics market or to the Horizon Superstore or whatever and buy something ready to fly, you go out and you crash it and you bin it. So if you are building something actually, and if you're not just investing your money, but investing time, your precious time to build something, you have a better connection to it, and you'll be more responsible in playing with it. You might just not go into your neighborhood and fly over your neighbor's house. You might choose a grassy field where you can't harass or endanger somebody. So I think building also has some educational aspect in it.
I think you're absolutely right. I think that the whole thing of going and buying a DJI quad and not putting any thought into it and immediately having it crash, or a similar style of flying camera, like you say, having more skin in the game means that you'll take more time, and you'll take more time with the model. As somebody that came into the hobby again back in 2007, 2008 into helicopters, that was a very steep learning curve about how to repair and build stuff, because it comes out the box and it flies great until you get your first blade strike and you destroy the blade and the feathering shaft, and you have to take the head apart. And you literally feel sick, because back then, you'd spend several £100 on a radio control helicopter and destroy it within 15 minutes, even though you're trying to be, and then you have to buy things like your pitch gauge and your swash leveling tool, and you have to get all this stuff. And then it's 3 nights watching, well, it was actually forum posts by a guy called Finless Bob back in the day on RC groups, watching Finless Bob's. He actually had little videos. He had to download them then. It was pre-YouTube. So you'd on your dial-up internet link, you'd start it downloading and go make a cup of tea, and then it was split into 7 videos, and those 7 videos over 3 nights I put the head back together so it was all set up properly. I'll tell you what, it was, the next time I flew it, I was absolutely making sure I was paying full attention and I was on the ball, because the penalty for not paying attention and being a bit half-arsed about it was another week's worth of me trying to rebuild this thing. So I think you're spot on.
But now you can get an icon too, and that's all taken care of. But the thing about building your own that I like about it is you can really change the flavor of a plane. Like, Mark, remember a couple of years ago you told me to put the Air B onto the back of my AR wing?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And what happened?
I remember that. I remember that when you basically pooped your pants because it was so fast.
My legs were shaking. It was like I took off and the thing was like at 800 feet within 10 seconds. It was just like so down, like Mark's a madman.
That's what's on here.
Cool. What's the next topic?
Okay, next one. This seems to be a little bit more complicated. So Expo, gyros, digital radios, and telemetry are not needed in the hobby, along with cheap knockoff receivers work just as good as the name brand stuff.
Steve, I think this, as you've been going around flying fields in the last 3 months and hobby shops, I'm interested on your view on this one.
So what the question was, gyros are not needed in this hobby? And then
Yeah, it's expo, gyros, telemetry, digital radios. They're all not needed in the hobby.
Okay, yeah. So it pretty much implies that you know how to fly as you're an expert flyer, right? And yeah, the problem is that when a lot of people who absolutely rely on stabilized planes, otherwise they cannot fly whatsoever. And some people progress, as we were talking about before, beyond this, but some people don't. Some people, I've talked to a number of people who feel like they need to be able to have a stabilized plane so they can land their plane, especially when it comes into crosswind. That's the most common thing I've seen. But digital radios are not needed in Expo. So these are the old timers who are saying these kinds of things. You know, I don't use Expo. I still run across these guys occasionally, but I mean, all these things are designed to make the hobby a little bit more enjoyable.
I have just one thing to add to that argument. Power steering, air conditioning, radio, or electronic stabilization systems,
launch control,
are also not needed in a car. I mean, you can also ride a horse. You don't even need a motor in a car. So why drive a car? You know.
Who needs power-assisted brakes anyway?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing. Of course, it's not needed to fly an RC plane. You can fly an RC plane on a 27 megahertz analog radio with 50-year-old servos.
The people are saying
works,
this are using that, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean,
using the car analogy, my first car had none of those things.
Right.
Mine neither. I had a radio. I had a radio in mine.
You had a radio? Oh, yeah, I had a radio.
My radio had more electronic than the whole car, because the whole car had nothing.
Yeah, this was a Mini with a sort of small 12-inch steering wheel.
Ford Fiesta
MK3. You drive something else with power steering. When you go back to that Mini, you realise how much your muscles in your arms have shrunk. And that's a small car.
The Expo thing is rather interesting, because when I started with RC flying, I had a Graupner D8 radio. D8 not like D8 mode, because Graupner back in the day said the 4-channel radio is actually an 8-channel radio, because you can go in both ways. So that's what Graupner was counting that time. And it had no Expo, absolutely nothing. And later on, as I progressed with computer radios, etc., I got used to having some kind of Expo, then more Expo, then less Expo. And I just realized when I had a spec wing in my hands for the first time, it was actually flying best without any Expo at all. Because when you're doing those tight turns, or when you're doing running gaps or something, you need to have a very steady control curve, because when you have much Expo in it, you need more and more stick travel, and actually the plane is then going nuts if you have a steep Expo angle. So it actually depends on the plane, I think. And nowadays I like no Expo at all, more than any Expo.
Also, don't forget that depending on your servo linkages, if, for example, you have a very wide servo angle, or your completely wing integrated servos with hidden linkages, you have basically a mechanical negative Expo, because the servo first moves. The first bit, the control surface moves the same degree, but as soon as the servo approaches basically a level, you have not much movement in this area on the control surface. So the further the servo turns, the less movement you get out of the control surface at the end.
It depends on your levers.
You have a negative.
Levers, yes.
Of course, it depends on the
Bruce
levers.
has a brilliant video about that. X-Jet Bruce has a
okay.
brilliant video about levers, with high-tech features called a whiteboard and cardboard and nails and threads and something. This video, honestly the best video about levers, servo levers I found so far.
And especially, and if you have a setup like that where you have a negative expo on your mechanics, you have to counteract that with the expo in your radio, basically. Otherwise, it will be too twitchy. Just as an example.
Yeah, when I show people how to set up a radio, so I do that quite a bit now. I show them three position switch. First one is nothing, so everything's turned off. Next one is a 70-30, so 30% expo, 70% rates. And the next one after that is 50-50. And I say 50-50 is something that should not work at all. I mean, this should be horrible to fly. If you're playing still twitchy at 50-50, something's absolutely wrong. Land it. Mechanically, there's something off with it. But all this you can dial back once you've got it flying. If you feel like 30-70 is still too much, you can dial it back and you can set to something lower and set that lower end much higher. So that's just my 2 cents. Wait, Mark is going to say something right now.
Yeah, I think we can go. We can go to the next topic at this point, or
Yes.
has someone something to say? Okay, this is a good one. This I actually like. ECOG doesn't work, or any other kind of calculation website like that.
Oh, eCalc. Yeah.
ECOG, yeah.
Yeah, it's the one that's the wing sweeps and everything.
Exactly, where you can add all the data, and then you can calculate how fast your plane will go, or what the stall speed will be, or the power draw, and all that stuff. I want to add the first point on this. I think for most cases, and especially as wing pilots, indeed ECOG does not work, in my opinion. The reason is just we don't have the necessary data to make ECOG work. We don't have the exact wing profile. We don't have the exact wing surface. We don't have the drag coefficient of our plane. We never have this information on any plane, and I have not seen anything yet where the manufacturer delivers this information. Maybe the German manufacturers sometimes do, but definitely not like Sonic Model or ZOHD or
they don't know themselves.
or whatever. Maybe they don't even know themselves.
I was about to say, I don't think they ever would. They have no idea.
I think the closest I've seen is actually wing loading. That was about it on the Mini Talon.
Well, that really is quite the strive.
Yeah, but
they don't include the lifting body, do they?
Well, the Mini Talon.
Oh,
Probably not.
There is.
I'm surprised they include the wings, let alone the lifting body.
Anyway,
sorry, no, it's wing area, not wing loading.
but in general, I think for us wing pilots, ECOG just doesn't work. If you build your planes from scratch and you have all the information, then of course that's a good source. You can use it, but in general it doesn't work. The only thing you can use it maybe is for basic stuff, like if you want to use or calculate your static thrust or your launch current, for example, before the plane actually is in the air. These are things you can calculate because you don't need the plane information about that, but everything over that, it's pretty much useless. For the quad guys, on the other hand, it is helpful because quads, especially mini quads like 5-inch, 7-inch freestyle quads and all that stuff, they basically work the same. They are flying bricks, and ECOG can very good calculate like hover throttle or like your current flow, your power draw, and all that stuff. This works pretty well, like I would say in a 10 to 15% error margin, but definitely nothing for wing pilots.
One little thing I'd like to add, just one little thing. ECOG is actually quite useful if you are experimenting with power setups. When you are, I agree absolutely that you don't have any data like drag coefficient, etc. If it goes for top speed or if it goes for efficiency at higher speeds, it's absolutely useless. I agree, but if you just want to compare, let's say a motor with a 2-blade prop and a certain pitch, and you want to compare it with a 4-blade prop with higher pitch, and you just want to see how the amps develop, how the thrust develops, etc., then ECalc is quite useful, but don't use it for speed estimation or don't use it for overall amp draw estimation. You just can get directions you can go for. And I had this discussion actually with Luke the other day. No, not the other day. When we were just talking about it the first time. You cannot go away with field testing. You need to field testing your setups. That's why you need ESC telemetry. You need an airspeed sensor. Then you can see, okay, how does your prop choice work out? How does your amps develop, etc.
When Glenn was here, Luke, go ahead.
Yeah, I've got loads of echo.
Okay, when
your disco loop.
Yeah, when we were, I don't know what's going on there. When we were talking about it before, it's not just field testing. You definitely can't get rid of it, but it's also how much data you can get from the field testing. You know, like you were saying, having airspeed, having ESC telemetry, having RPM. The more data points you have, the more of a overall view of your system you can get. You can do it just with, I don't know, voltage, current, and speed, but you have to make so many more guesses that then you have to verify with more and more flights. So.
Yeah, I'd actually love to buy to build a wind tunnel.
Yeah,
that would be great.
It's the dream.
Yeah.
Fun story. When Glenn was here, I was visiting a friend at his flying field. That was the flying club on one of my latest videos from there. He built a fun jet, and he wanted to build a high-speed fun jet with a pretty high kV in-runner motor. I don't know the exact specs. With a 6x6 or 7x7 speed prop, something. Not like that. It was more you would say a dirty build or something I would throw together. But yeah, he built that fun jet. It was really heavy, 6S setup. For now, he planned to run it on 8S later. He used eCorg by best guess and the information he was able to get, and eCorg told him it should be in the 340-350 kilometer per hour ballpark. You know what the real, or make a guess what the real speed was?
What was his pitch speed?
I think it was 7x7.
Sorry?
7x7 prop.
No, the calculated pitch speed.
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't have the exact information.
So eCorg said 300 something?
Yeah, 340, 350.
And does it look like the average FPV gypsy wagon?
I think no antennas on the outside.
Okay, let's say 250 max.
190.
Yeah.
It just wasn't working. And the reason was because eCorg does not include the motor torque, for example. He had an in-runner motor with not enough torque, so he didn't get to the RPM he needed. It was just not enough torque. And with all the other data,
there is also another problem there, where if eCalc predicted that he was going to be flying at 300 and whatever kilometers per hour, then it would have predicted that the propeller would have had much less load on it because it has much more airspeed coming into it. Then, as it's not flying as fast, the propeller has more load, can't pick up RPM, therefore it's flying slower, so it has more load, gets worse and worse. If the plane had just a little bit less drag, it may have been able to break through into that point where then it has a bit more efficiency and it can, pick up speed a bit more.
I think my view on this is that we're talking about eCalc, but there's lots of these tools around. I think some of the limitations come from the fact that the tool may not be including specific things. I think in my experience, helping people with this stuff, a lot of it is because people don't understand how to use the tool properly. So if they don't put the right stuff in the tool, the answers don't seem to make sense. My personal way to use eCalc is to put in the setup that I think I want, based on gut feel, back of a fag packet. I saw it once in a mate's setup and it looked okay. Run the numbers and then start tweaking stuff to see what it does with the static thrust, the top speed and things until it gets closer to what I'm after for that particular model. Those what ifs are very good, because the way I used to do it was I'd buy a motor and prop and an ESC, I'd stick it on the model, I'd fly it and get the other day and go, yeah, And then I go and get the 1400 kV version of that motor instead, and I stick that on and I'd wire it in, I'd take it to the field, I'd fly it again, it'd go better, but still, yeah. And then usually the Goldilocks thing would click in, and the third setup would be about what I was after. It has been useful for me getting through and getting rid of at least one of those rounds of buying stuff to try out. However, it does mean my spares parts bin isn't quite as big as it used to be.
This is, by the way, also a good point, or confirms what I said a few times on Wingtalk already, and also to other people. People usually go the wrong way. They say, okay, this is the plane I have. What motor do I put on that? And then what prop do I put on that motor? That's actually the wrong way. For the right thing, you have to go the opposite way. You select the prop for the plane, and then you select the motor for the prop. But as said before, we don't have the data of the plane that we know what this Goldilocks zone will be, where when is the Henrik, help me, what are the types of drag? You have the
Parasitic
drag and induced drag, yeah. As soon as the induced drag hits the propeller thrust, then you can go faster. It's just physics. And without having that point or this curve, at what speed you have, how much induced drag you have, you cannot calculate what prop you need. So at the end, it is try and error. And you have to replace the prop and the motor to try out different things.
Another thing
there must be a good sort of, these tools must be good for a basic understanding of what you want to achieve, though. I mean, I have a tool on my website, and it's nowhere near as complicated or as in-depth as eCalc, but Rupert White keeps on asking me to add more cells on the battery.
I know exactly what Rupert White's on about. I keep saying to you as well, your tool is like one of the best things I've used for, doing speed runs and stuff. Not because it's anything incredible, but it just has everything there, so I don't have to, sit on the calculator for 5 minutes every time I want to, change the prop or whatever. It's perfect.
It's also a good baseline, because if you have the propeller pitch speed, and then you go out and fly, you go full throttle, and you see that's my plane speed, that's the propeller's pitch speed. As long as they are close together in a certain percentage range, okay, I can go for more pitch. I don't need more thrust, I need more pitch to go faster.
Exactly.
And then you can go to a more pitched prop until this span is like, I would say, if you near a 30% difference between plane speed and pitch speed, then there's no need to go for more pitch. If you then want to go faster, you have to use a bigger prop. So simple. So you can use it as a baseline, and that's very helpful.
Okay, so let's have one last topic before we call it a day.
Yeah, Henrik had a good idea. You cannot survive in the hobby without a 3D printer. And I think
true.
I think I leave that for you guys, because my opinion is that's not a myth, that's a fact.
100% a fact. You can see 2 3D printers up above my head, and I have another 2 on the other side of the room. 4 prints at a minimum. Hard minimum.
What?
No, I agree. I mean, obviously it's obviously it is a myth. You can get away with not using one, but once you've got one, it's like, why didn't I have this before? It just makes things so much easier.
Yeah.
I honestly hate it. I hate it with all my heart. I was this traditional guy with balsa blocks and sandpaper, and every time
Henrik, just to clarify, do you hate 3D printers, or do you hate the person you've become because of a 3D printer?
Both.
Okay.
Or do you hate your printer in particular?
Both. I loved working with balsa, and I loved working with composite, and I loved making things out of balsa. Just having a block 10 by 10 by 10 centimeters, and an hour later with sandpaper, I had something that was coming out of that. And as you can see, today it's just 3D printing, and it's so much faster. It's so much more convenient, because when it's not working, it's going in the bin, and I'll have a next print run. So yeah, that's
You can combine the two. I mean, Luke's got perfect examples of using 3D prints and composites.
yes,
I was about to say,
that's the next step.
3D prints and composites go so perfectly together.
Yeah,
I mean, I mean, I have to say, actually, there is one option where you do not really need a 3D printer, at least if you have a CNC machine. Alternatively. So,
that's what everyone says. Don't get a 3D printer, just get a CNC machine instead. It's the cheap option.
Yeah.
But I mean, let's be honest.
I need a gold shitting donkey.
Yeah. I mean, it's not just printing out finished stuff. I mean, it's getting a 3D printer and then going to Thingiverse and print out mods, or asking friends if they can design something for you is just one step, and the next one is just to go forward and you start to design your own things. And sometimes it's just small stuff. I mean, just take this for example. I have my AR Pro here. Just a simple little cover for the base with a hole in it to reach the bind button if needed. Of course, you can cut that out of a piece of wood or something and then just drill a hole, but it's just cleaner basically. And then this can go more advanced, like complete flight controller mounts. You can make air inlets, you can make air outlets, for example. Camera mounts, a very big example, for example.
So Lee, you have a point.
I was just going to agree with everybody. I own 3 3D printers, and I got one. And when I first got it, I thought, what the heck am I going to use this for? And now it's an indispensable tool. Behind me, I have one with a little 100 bed that does all that stuff that Mark was talking about. However, the latest thing that I've got in is a laser engraver / cutter doing stuff with balsa. And when when I first got that in, I got it and I kind of set it up and I thought, okay, this is great. And I feel like Tony Stark now because I've got lasers. But what am I going to make with it? And then suddenly all these things started popping up in the hobby. So they're not necessary. You can live without a 3D printer. You can live without a laser cutter. But blimey, Charlie, when you get this stuff and you start tinkering around with it, it opens up whole new areas of the hobby. And you'll find you have lots of mates in the hobby who suddenly want to come round to your house to see this stuff, usually with a project under their arm that they need something cutting for.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I agree with the laser, definitely. I need to cut some. I'm turning my old S800 into a sort of spec wing. And
so
laser cutting winglets, so useful.
So wood elevons that say Painless360 on them is what the next thing is, right?
Well, lots of things in here already have the pill engraved on them, right? But it's amazing. My wife, who's a crafter as well, she's now seen it, so now she wants me to cut 3D Christmas trees. She wants engraved coasters and decorations, because you can do acrylic and all that stuff. So it's probably going to be running more for her than I. But actually, the fact that you can do engraving, it's just so cool. And all those times when you have a little piece of balsa in a plane, exactly. And if you put a little LED at the side of it. Then you've got a lit up sign for the behind you when you do your video. But the whole balsa thing, all those kind of battery supports and stuff that get snapped and destroyed when you crash your foamy plane, and you're desperately trying to super glue them back together. It doesn't matter if you can find all the bits. You just photocopy it, get it traced in the program, fire up the laser, hit the button, and 15 seconds later, you've got the part to put back in, and also then you've got the model, the outline that you can share with other people. But of course, I will engrave it with a Painless360 pill.
Does Lucy have a Cricut?
Oh yeah, she's got a Cricut. She's probably got more machines than I have, and that's saying something. So at the moment she's in full Halloween mode. So I'll probably be cutting balsa bats for her to spray black at some point over the next 2 days.
some people also might say, hey, a 3D printer can also, or is also too expensive. I think you don't. Okay, Henrik, I see you nodding, but you are on a complete different level, because your way to solve print quality issues is not configuring it better, it's just throwing money on a new printer. So
what have you got, Henrik?
Let's talk about that in a minute. Just let me finish my sentence. I think after a while, I have an ANAV A8. This thing I bought in early 2016 or 2017. I'm not sure right now. It was pretty new on the market back then. It was 150 euros at that time. And I think just by printing out spare parts like motor mounts or winglets or even other stuff, parts for my tripod, for example, just spare parts that break, if you print them, you get back the whole printer money without a few months, basically, because you don't have to buy new stuff. That's the first point. And I forgot what I wanted to say for the second point, but yeah, you basically can save a lot of money. Oh, and the 3D printer was actually the reason how I came into the hobby. A few of you might already know that story. Back in the day, when I got that one, I was sick at home for about 2 weeks because I had a very bad cold. So I was spending my whole day on YouTube just zapping through videos, and at one point I stumbled over a review of that ANAV A8, and it said, hey, super cheap 3D printer. And I said, looks interesting, maybe I buy one and just try it out. Then I had it here, and after printing like some cubes or some boards or like small statues, I thought, what can I do with that? I started printing airplanes and drones. So, and this is basically also my way how I came to the RC hobby.
I'm so glad you did that and not Warhammer.
I printed actually a lot of Warhammer stuff for a friend of mine. So Henrik,
Warhammer, don't let us go down that rabbit hole. Oh, Warhammer, yeah.
Henrik, your printer story.
Yeah, it's not really a printer story. I mean, as I said, I liked to do things by hands, and but at some point in time I realized I need something. And you remember I asked you for advice on a 3D printer, and you advised me that artillery thing, this artillery S2, I think was it, and I wasn't really happy with it. And then I went on YouTube, on the Paid Actors Club on YouTube, and got a little, let's see, fooled, and bought a KDX Max until I realized that the thing is full of crap, and I had to upgrade critical parts. I'm basically now invested like 2 times of the original price in it, with a clipper mainboard, with different bearings, with input shaping, resonance compensation, whatever, and it's still not like I would love to have it. Yeah. I know. But I want to have a printer that is moving fast. I want to print stuff fast and good, because it's also some aspect of efficiency. I mean, when you have a bigger part and you print it for the best of 48 hours, especially when you're having filaments that need more temperature, like ABS or nylon or carbon fiber reinforced nylon.
You will see it on the electricity bill.
Yeah, you'll see, especially now when electricity is going through the roof. And it certainly makes a difference between printing in 20 millimeters per second, or if you can do 300 with the same hardware, so and the same quality.
Well, guys,
I can solidly say my first print was an ANAV A8, and the only modification that I originally did to it was upgrading the firmware to Marlin, so I could do things like linear advance and that sort of thing. and I now have a Prusa i3 Mark III's Plus, and it has none of the convenience features, but the print quality is identical. The Anet A8 with no physical modification whatsoever, it prints just as well, even just as fast. I have now done many other modifications to it, but even then, the print quality and speed was on par with Prusa Mark III's Plus.
My ANET A8 has not much any modifications either. I have some a casing for the motherboard because that was free hanging with all the cables when in stock. I have a cable chain for the bed cable. The only big modification I made was the E3D V6 printhead that's on there, with a complete custom 3D printed extruder actually, and the firmware on it is a complete from scratch clean setup of Marlin with the last version released that I made myself, and I have printed a GPS mount for Henrik's 7-inch quad for INAV.
Really nice, really nice.
And yeah, I sent it to him in TPU. Okay, I can only print in 30 to 40 millimeters per second when I print TPU, but he was shocked how good that looks, and he said it looks better than your 3D printer that was how much?
No, it looks better than my TPU prints, because I actually cannot print TPU anymore because I have a full metal hot end. I can only print high temperature filaments.
But it makes very nice prints. Of course, I have to go slow to not get ringing and stuff, but it works.
Okay. Well, guys, I think that's going to end it for us today. I really wanted to thank our guests today. Both of them didn't know they'd be on the show today, so it was. It's been great having both Henrik here, filling in, and of course Lee, having you back here was fantastic. Really great to have you again. You gonna say anything before?
I just thank you for the invite. It's been fun hanging out.
Okay. All right, guys. Until next time, we're all saying goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Goodbye, everyone. Bye.